Welcome to this edition of the Head to Head Podcast. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 153 of the podcast. And in this edition of the podcast, I'm talking about Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers reportedly wanting to leave the team, despite the fact that Rodgers is coming off of a season where he won his third MVP award, and the Packers went to the NFC Title game for the second year in a row. And nobody should really be surprised by this news, because if you look at the era we are in the era where great quarterbacks do not finish their careers with one team. Tom Brady left the New England Patriots despite the fact that he won 6 Super Bowls for that organization. The Patriots were put on the map by Tom Brady, yet that did not end well. Peyton Manning is the greatest player in Indianapolis Colts history, but despite that fact, things did not end well. They drafted Andrew Luck. They moved on from Peyton Manning. This is the way these things go nowadays. There's so many examples. Phillip Rivers with the Chargers. They didn't want to bring him back even for one more goodbye season. The good feelings between great quarterbacks and teams are few and far between. Big Ben is likely to end his career as a Steeler, but even that is put into question. It's just that the era that we are in, especially in this era where the quarterbacks are being paid top dollars. Aaron Rodgers is 38 years old. He is going to be that age when the season begins. It's not okay for the Packers to give that kind of money to a guy for that long term. He's not a long-term answer. Even though Tom Brady just won a Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we can all agree it's kind of silly the kind of money he's making with the Buccaneers. You can't look at these guys as long-term answers. And the reality is, if you don't have a long-term answer at the position, you need to be looking for one. But if you're Aaron Rodgers, if you're looking at this from Aaron Rodgers' point of view, he has to be upset. How about this stat? 9 of the last 10 drafts, the Packers have either drafted a defensive player or Jordan Love, the guy who will probably end up replacing Aaron Rodgers. That has to frustrate Aaron Rodgers that they have not gotten him offensive help. I know there are other people on the other side of the argument. The Green Bay Packers have been one of the more consistent franchises in NFL history. They went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers seamlessly. They're a really stable organization, and there is talent around Rodgers. He has Aaron Jones, one of the better running backs in the league right now, and he has arguably the best receiver in the NFL right now in Davante Adams, and he's played with top-tier offensive talent like Greg Jennings. The team tried to bring in Jimmy Graham. Some of those moves haven't worked out for them, but the Packers have been a pretty consistent organization. But on the other hand, the biggest argument I have against the Green Bay Packers is, look at it from this point of view. They have had either Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback for each of the past, 25 football seasons, and yet between the two of them, they've won 2 Super Bowls. And it's not the quarterback's fault for those failures. It's the organization's. They rely way too heavily on who is playing quarterback for that franchise. They do not go out of their way and bring in top-tier free agent talent. One thing I would say is, it seems like if you have a great quarterback, just by having that guy, you can probably win 1 Super Bowl. Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl with the Colts. Brett Favre won a Super Bowl with the Packers. But if you want to be a dynasty, it has to be more than just that. The Steelers have 2 Super Bowls with Big Ben Roethlisberger because they've had great teams around him. They had great talent, and they've gone out and they've spent money, and they've been consistent at the draft and adding talent to Big Ben. Look at the offensive talent Big Ben Roethlisberger has played with on the Steelers. Antonio Brown, Hines Ward, Juju Smith-Schuster, the list goes on and on. and when some of those players leave, they just bring in more offensive talent around him. He's played with a lot better offensive players than Aaron Rodgers has. Aaron Rodgers makes some of these guys look a lot better than they actually are. I'm not saying Davante Adams isn't one of the best wide receivers in the league, but I'm saying Aaron Rodgers definitely makes him look better than he is. If your big Super Bowl plans are that you're going to win the big game just because you have the best quarterback, I'm saying that's not enough long term. I think you can win that one Super Bowl just by having that great player. Peyton Manning with the Colts, Aaron Rodgers with the Packers, Brett Favre with the Packers. But if you want to win multiple Super Bowls with those guys, you need to bring in top tier talent around them. And that's a very difficult thing to do given the fact that you're paying that guy boatloads of money. It will be interesting to see what ends up happening with Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs. Will the Chiefs suffer from the fact that Pat Mahomes is going to make $500 million, or will they just continue to restructure his contract and be able to keep guys around like a Tyreek Hill, like a Travis Kelce? Can the Kansas City Chiefs become a dynasty, or like Peyton Manning, like Aaron Rodgers, like Brett Favre, will Pat Mahomes only win one Super Bowl as a member of the Kansas City Chiefs? That's the frustration for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, is that there's so many opportunities for them to be better than what they actually are. They don't go out and spend the money. And I get the argument is they can't spend the money because they're spending it all on him. I think the thing that usually ends most of these relationships between the star quarterbacks and these franchises is drafting the replacement for your star player while that guy is still playing. The minute the Patriots drafted Jimmy Garoppolo while Tom Brady was there was probably an exit plan for Tom Brady. Maybe he stayed there longer. Maybe he thought Jimmy Garoppolo was going to end up being his replacement. But the minute they drafted Garoppolo, Tom Brady kind of spiritually at least left the building. And I think the same thing happened for Aaron Rodgers when they drafted Jordan Love. That idea. Do you know why Drew Brees never left the New Orleans Saints? Because the New Orleans Saints, even when Drew Brees was injured, never brought in a guy who could replace him. We all knew Taysom Hill wasn't going to replace him. We all knew Teddy Bridgewater wasn't going to replace him. And we all knew Jameis Winston wasn't going to replace him. So that kept Drew Brees happy. That's what kept Drew Brees as a member of the New Orleans Saints. It's not the money. Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, I think they do care about the money, but I think guys like that who've won multiple MVPs care more about the job security. Tom Brady wants you to think of him as the answer for years to come. That's why he's happy in Tampa Bay right now. They will let him play for however long he wants to play, and Aaron Rodgers wants that situation. It doesn't matter if it's with the Packers or any other team, and that's why I think he's willing to leave the Green Bay Packers, because instead of getting him help, they drafted his replacement. Also, fair or unfair, it doesn't seem like Aaron Rodgers has ever been happy with who the head coach of the Green Bay Packers is. He wasn't happy with Mike McCarthy, and I think he's been proven right about Mike McCarthy, that Mike McCarthy was only winning a Super Bowl because Aaron Rodgers was his quarterback. Look at how disappointing he was in Dallas last season. And with Matt LaFleur, yes, a lot of people will say Matt LaFleur has a 26-6 record, and they will say, look, he's one of the best offensive minds. I can't say that for certain, because guess what I think? I think Aaron Rodgers is making Matt LaFleur look a lot better than he actually is. If Matt LaFleur has to coach Jordan Love next season, I don't think the Packers are going to be a very good football team. I have no idea how good a head coach Matt LaFleur is, but the one thing I do seem certain of is that Aaron Rodgers does not like Matt LaFleur, and that is one of the biggest issues with the team right now, is the coach and the quarterback do not get along. And maybe it's all from Aaron Rodgers' side, but I have no idea. I do know that has been a bigger issue with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, and that's another thing that makes these quarterbacks leave. You can't tell me that the tumultuous relationship between Brady and Belichick is the reason why Brady left, and he went to to a guy in Bruce Arians who might be a lesser head coach, but was more willing to coach a guy like Tom Brady and respect his point of view. I think that's what Aaron Rodgers wants. He wants an organization and a head coach who will respect him and the fact that he's a three-time MVP and has a Super Bowl. He not only wants to be paid like that, he wants the job security. Maybe he's asking for too much, but after he just saw what happened with Tom Brady, he must really look at that as a distinct possibility that he could get that somewhere. And I'm thinking about two teams that could really use Aaron Rodgers. And the first one is really interesting because I think a team that could really use Aaron Rodgers is the New York Giants. Daniel Jones is not it. The Jets just got a franchise quarterback in Zach Wilson, presumably because of the draft. So if the Giants want to make a splash, go out and get Aaron Rodgers. You need a guy. You need to be the biggest team in New York. You need to compete. You have a good head coach now, presumably. You have Saquon Barkley coming back. You have to be a competitive football team, and I think Aaron Rodgers could put that team over the map. And in the NFC East, that team could dominate that division with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I think he could win the division over Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. I think he could win the division over the Washington football team. I think they would become the best team in that division if Aaron Rodgers were to join the New York Giants. I think that would be exciting, and that's the type of team that Joe Judge would definitely respect Aaron Rodgers. That move makes way too much sense not for the Giants to be involved. Daniel Jones is not it. Maybe he's a little bit like Eli, but I think he's a lot lesser version of Eli. So they need to move on from him and get a franchise quarterback, and that guy should be a guy like Aaron Rodgers. The other team I think should be interested in Aaron Rodgers is the Raiders. This has gone terribly wrong with John Gruden as their head coach. And if you want to turn this around and justify the fact that you gave John Gruden $100 million to come out of retirement, you need to make a splash at the quarterback position. Derek Carr is not it. He's a nice player. He's not a top-tier quarterback. He could be good if the team was better, but they're not. That team needs a guy like Aaron Rodgers to solve all their issues. John Gruden needs a guy like Aaron Rodgers to actually win football games. It's not working with the Raiders, and it's not working with John Gruden. If they want to turn this around, they need to make that huge splash, spend the money, get Aaron Rodgers, and compete to, at the very least, make the postseason. Those are the two teams I think should be most interested in Aaron Rodgers. Yes, some people will say the Denver Broncos. They should be in it as well. But for me, it's the Giants and the Raiders. Those are two teams that are middling, that are not going anywhere. The Giants are going through the same thing over and over again. They were a nice team last season, but they only competed for the division because the division was awful. They do not have the answer at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers would be a huge upgrade over Daniel Jones, and he would be a huge upgrade over Derek Carr with the Raiders. Those are the two teams to me that Rodgers should want to go to and should want him. That would be the perfect situation for Rodgers if he revitalized the Giants. They spend money this offseason on a star wide receiver in Kenny Golladay. You have Saquon Barkley, who's going to be a star running back. Get yourself a star quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. Daniel Jones is not the answer at that position for that team. That is a team that needs to make a big splash. The Jets have made their splash. They drafted Zach Wilson. Maybe the Jets are about to turn things around. But if Aaron Rodgers came to the Giants, they would take over New York City instantly and become the best team there. That is something they need to look into if Aaron Rodgers is actually going to be traded from the Green Bay Packers. And that's the other side of things. It doesn't necessarily look like the Green Bay Packers want to move on from Aaron Rodgers. And why would they? He's coming off of an MVP season, and I think he made a team look a lot better than they actually are. It's like Russell Wilson with the Seahawks. I think the Packers are an extremely flawed football team that are made to look a lot better because of Aaron Rodgers. So why would the team want to move on from him? I don't even know if they think that Jordan Love is the answer at the quarterback position. I don't think this is the same thing that when Brett Favre left the Packers and all of a sudden he came back and they were like, no, we have Aaron Rodgers. I think this Packers group would let Aaron Rodgers walk into that building no matter what, because they know they don't have a lot else other than Aaron Rodgers. And a lot of people are making that argument. Why would Rodgers want to leave the Packers? It's not like he's going to have a better chance to win. To that argument, I would make this argument. Look at what Tom Brady just did with the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers were laughingstocks. They were coming off of a season where they were 7-9 and Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions. Yeah, he threw for 30 touchdowns, but he turned over the ball 30 times. Then Tom Brady comes in. They bring in a few players. It's not like they changed the whole organization around. They still won with the same type of players like Mike Evans, and they won a Super Bowl. That's what Aaron Rodgers now thinks is possible because he just saw it happen with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. So if Rodgers goes to a team like the Giants, who were losers last year, I think he looks at that and goes, I can turn that type of team around. They have Kenny Golladay. They have Saquon Barkley. He could look at a situation like that and go, I can turn that team around. I could turn the Raiders around. It's about me. It's about the quarterback position. Players will want to come to that team and play with me. I think quarterback movement is going to become more and more prevalent as the years go by. And another thing to look at is, look about this. Everyone was clamoring for Deshaun Watson, and now with that controversy going on, the biggest quarterback who can go out and get is Aaron Rodgers. So some of those teams that were banking on Deshaun Watson being available are probably now going to go after Aaron Rodgers. There are, of course, going to be some teams that are now out of it. San Francisco just drafted their quarterback. I don't think the Patriots are going to be interested in Aaron Rodgers now that they just drafted Mac Jones, but there are plenty of teams that should be in the mix. Just because the Panthers got Sam Darnold doesn't mean they shouldn't be interested in Aaron Rodgers. He's a huge upgrade at the position no matter where he goes. The guy is coming off of a season where he threw 48 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Yes, he is 38 years old, but Aaron Rodgers has plenty left in the tank. And as a fan of Aaron Rodgers, I want to see him go somewhere and compete for a Super Bowl. The fact that he hasn't even been back to the big game is kind of depressing, and I think he's a top 3 quarterback of this era, along with Brady, along with Manning. Aaron Rodgers deserves to be in that class, but I think because he only has 1 Super Bowl, a lot of people will take him out of that class, even though, let's be serious, Peyton Manning's 2nd Super Bowl shouldn't even count. He did not contribute all that much in that season where the Broncos won their Super Bowl. But there are people who think Peyton Manning is better. Tom Brady is definitely the greatest quarterback of all time, but Aaron Rodgers could get into the discussion if he wins 1 or 2 more Super Bowls, because he's inarguably the most talented quarterback of his era. I want to see Aaron Rodgers be happy and win, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen with the Green Bay Packers, because if you look at the Packers, how they look at things, it seems to me that they're just happy always going to the NFC title game and coming up short. And that has to anger Aaron Rodgers. While other teams are spending tons of cash in free agency, the Packers are happy to rely on the fact that they have Aaron Rodgers. And that is not a winning formula. Like I said at the top of the podcast, you can win a Super Bowl just because you have a great franchise quarterback. It's what happened with Peyton and the Colts. It's what happened with Brett Favre and the Packers. And now it seems that's what's happening with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. If you want to build a dynasty, you need to build a great team around the quarterback. And to me, that has not happened with the Green Bay Packers, and that's why Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay, and probably rightfully so. One of 2 things are going to come out of this. Either A, Aaron Rodgers stays with the Packers and gets a nice contract extension that will guarantee he will end his career as a Packer, the one thing that Brady never got with the Patriots, or B, the Packers are going to be forced to trade Aaron Rodgers, and who knows if they'll be able to get this boatload for him. A lot of people are saying that they could get numerous number one picks, but if you know Aaron Rodgers only wants to come to your team, maybe the price can go way down. This is the most fascinating thing to happen this offseason, and it happened the day of the draft, which is completely insane. Aaron Rodgers is taking over this offseason, and how this concludes is going to be something that could turn the league upside down. If a team like the Raiders or Giants or the Broncos or even the Panthers get Aaron Rodgers, their entire season goes from a bust to being ultra competitive, and that's super exciting. I think player movement is super exciting. I hope Aaron Rodgers actually does go to a new team, because I'm sick of the same old song and dance of the Packers being a really good team but not getting the job done. I think they are resting on the fact that Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback, and to me, that is getting super annoying. I want to see Aaron Rodgers back in the Super Bowl sooner rather than later. End his career with at least one or two more Super Bowl titles. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Head to Head Podcast. I'm Cam McKinney. There'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and iTunes, so please rate, review, and subscribe.